Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for latest updates.
A simple act of being nice to a fan might have ruined the jobs of two of reality TV's most loved car fixers. Tom Smith and Jordan Butler were the best parts of Gas Monkey Garage, but they disappeared from Fast and Loud without anyone really explaining why. The story you heard was not true. The real truth is a mixed-up mess of secret deals, fake fights, and a shocking lie that was way worse than anyone could have thought. The day the cameras told lies. On TV, the end came quietly. In a Fast and Loud episode called Holy Grail Firebirds Part 2, which played in spring 2014, the show just said goodbye to Tom and Jordan. There was no big fight, no crazy exit. One moment they were part of the Gas Monkey family, and the next they were gone. The show was about a really stressful, high-pressure build of the first two Pontiac Firebirds ever made with a penalty of $10,000 a day for being late. The show made it seem like during this huge project, the garage just had to let the two mechanics go. For the millions of fans who watched every week, it felt like something was missing, like pages were torn out of the story. The show had sometimes hinted at problems, saying the two were fired for normal work issues like showing up late or doing bad work, but that was just a clean, easy story made for TV. It was a nice little package to hide a much messier truth. Soon, a more dramatic version of the story started to spread thanks to celebrity news websites. This version focused on one expensive thing, Richard Rawlings' personal Rolls-Royce car. According to this story, Tom and Jordan made a deadly mistake. They let a fan get too close to Richard's prized car to take a picture. A manager saw this and right away got mad at them. The fight got heated. Tom and Jordan, feeling the manager was going too far, told him to, in very clear words, chill out. That act of standing up was the last straw. Within a few hours, they were called into the office and fired. This story made them look like rebels. Two guys who stood their ground but paid the biggest price. It was a good story, full of fighting and drama. But it still was not the whole story. There is a third version of what happened that day, one that comes from Tom Smith himself. This version is not about not following orders or being rude. It's about caring. According to Tom, the fan at the center of the incident was not just any fan. It was a fan with cystic fibrosis who had come to the garage to see the cars and meet the guys. In this telling of the story, Richard Rawlings himself saw the fan near his car and got really angry. He supposedly used harsh, bad language, ordering the sick fan to get away from his car. Tom and Jordan could not stand by and watch. They stepped in to defend the fan, which led to the big fight that cost them their jobs. This story changes everything. It turns Tom and Jordan from troublemakers into heroes. They were not fired for breaking a rule. They were fired for standing up for someone who could not stand up for themselves. 3 different stories, each pointing to a different ending. One was a quiet, work-related parting of ways. Another was a dramatic clash of big egos over a fancy car. The last was a good deed that ended in punishment. But what if none of them were the real story? What if they were all just pieces of a much bigger puzzle, a carefully made-up story designed to set the stage for something no one saw coming? The darkness was not in the firing itself, but in realizing that the whole event might have been a fake show from the very beginning. If you think their firing was the end of the story, you have not seen anything yet. A rivalry built on lies. For most people, getting fired from a hit reality TV show would be a job-ending disaster. For Tom Smith and Jordan Butler, it was the best thing that ever happened to them. Almost right after their dramatic exit from Gas Monkey Garage, the two guys landed their own show on the very same network, the Discovery Channel. It was called Misfit Garage and it was set to be the ultimate story of revenge. The show would follow Tom and Jordan as they started their own rival shop to take on Richard Rawlings and his empire. It was a perfect story. The underdogs thrown out by the king rising up to build their own kingdom. But it was almost too perfect. How could two mechanics fired in shame get a spin-off deal so quickly? The answer lies in a secret that was hidden in plain sight in the show's own credits. The greatest trick Richard Rawlings ever pulled was making the world think he had enemies. The entire idea of Misfit Garage was the epic fight between the new fired-up garage and the mighty Gas Monkey Garage. But the rivalry was a complete lie. The man Tom and Jordan were supposedly fighting against was the one signing their paychecks. Richard Rawlings was an executive producer of Misfit Garage. The competition, The arguments, the drama, it was all a carefully built lie. Rawlings was not just a producer with his name on the project. He had total control over his so-called rivals. His power was complete. He was the landlord for their new shop, Fired Up Garage. In a moment of supreme irony, the Misfits were renting the original smaller building that Gas Monkey Garage had just moved out of. So when Richard would show up on camera to collect the rent, it was not just a funny gag for TV. It was real. He was also the show's money manager, meaning he decided how much money was given to each car build and how the garage was run. He even had creative control influencing which cars were featured and how they were fixed. The evidence was everywhere. The firing was staged. The spin-off was planned all along. The feud was fake. This was more than just a clever TV trick. It was a brilliant business plan. Rawlings had created a self-contained universe of drama. He controlled both the heroes of Fast and Loud and the rebellious underdogs of Misfit Garage. Viewers could cheer for the established success of Gas Monkey or root for the little guys at Fired Up. And either way, Richard Rawlings was making money. His frequent appearances on Misfit Garage, which were presented as surprise and unwelcome drop-ins, were reportedly scripted events that earned him an additional $22,000 each time. He had made his own opposition. The war was not real. It was a product. And this business, built on a foundation of pure fiction, created a strange and stressful world for the people who had to live inside it every day. The final days at Fast and Loud were not dark because of a fight. They were dark because they were the beginning of a lie that would eventually eat up everyone involved. Even in a world of scripted drama, a little bit of real rebellion can shine through. When Tom Smith and his partners founded their new shop, they called it Fired Up Garage. On the surface, it was a great name, suggesting passion and energy, but it was also an inside joke. For years, Tom had dreamed of one day opening his own shop called FNU Garage. He even had a sign on his toolbox from 1988 that read FNU Auto Service. The name Fired Up Garage was as close as he could get on TV. A subtle defiant jab at the man who had supposedly fired them, but was now secretly their boss. It was a small real moment in a sea of fake stuff. But that realness could not save them from the chaos that was coming. A house built on lies is bound to fall. And Fired Up Garage began to crumble from the inside almost as soon as it was built. The show was famous for its constantly changing cast. It seemed like every season another key member was walking out the door. The business that was supposed to be a brotherhood of misfits became a revolving door of mechanics and partners. The original four founders were Tom Jordan, Thomas Weeks, and Scott McMillan. Thomas Weeks was a self-taught mechanic who grew up around cars even after a childhood accident where a transmission rod went through his mouth and throat. Scott McMillan had also worked at Gas Monkey before joining the Misfits. The departures started early. Founding partner Scott McMillan left to focus on his own business, Scott Rod's Garage. Later, mechanic Kevin Clark also quit, saying he was tired of all the drama that seemed to follow the show everywhere it went. The pressure of keeping up a fake rivalry while trying to build a real business was tearing the team apart. The show was filled with made-up arguments, not just with Rawlings, but between the partners themselves. The most damaging departure was that of Jordan Butler, one of the original founders and the heart of the show alongside Tom. He quit during the fourth season after arguments about bringing in new partners and the possibility of moving the shop to a new location. While the show portrayed it as a business disagreement, sources close to the production said the split was much more bitter and mean than what viewers saw on screen. Jordan's exit was a massive blow. He was one of the original two, the reason the show existed in the first place. When he walked away, the dream of the Misfit Garage began to die. After 6 seasons, Misfit Garage simply vanished from the airwaves in 2018. There was no grand finale, no official announcement from the Discovery Channel. The show was just gone, leaving fans wondering what had happened. The silence was so strange that co-owner Thomas Weeks eventually took to social media to voice his own frustration. When a fan asked why there were no new seasons, he replied, "I guess they do not like us no more. How do you remove a hit show, is beyond me." But the truth was the show was likely no longer a hit. Viewership was declining and the cost of production was high. Unlike other car shows based on real functioning businesses, Fired Up Garage was mostly a TV set. Producers had to supply everything from tools to the cars themselves, which made each episode incredibly expensive to make. Furthermore, the show had earned a bad reputation among serious car lovers. Car guys around the world criticized their building methods and what they saw as disrespect for classic cars. In one infamous episode, the crew was caught on camera using plaster dip, a removable coating instead of real paint on a drive shaft. A clear sign they were faking the work for the cameras. The empire built on a lie had finally fallen apart under the weight of its own fakeness. The men behind the monkeys. To understand why the Misfit Garage experiment ended the way it did, you have to understand the two men at its center. Tom Smith and Jordan Butler walked the same path, but they arrived at very different destinations. Their stories revealed the true human cost of living inside a reality TV show. Tom Smith was born to be on camera. He was a car guy through and through, a passion that started when he was just 10 years old. He mowed lawns to earn enough money to buy his first car, a 1973 Grand V. He learned the trade from his uncle who owned a junkyard in Georgia and from a master mechanic in Ohio named Carl Parsons, who took Tom under his wing. Tom's youth was filled with the kinds of wild stories that sound like they were written for a movie. At 16, he drove a 1967 Ford Galaxy with a 428 Police Interceptor engine so fast over a set of railway tracks that he literally broke the car in half. As a 10-year-old, he went on a joyride in a 1974 Pontiac Granville and ended up crashing it into a police car. He even once tried to turn an old AMC Gremlin into a boat, only to have it sink in a lake with him inside. He was a natural-born misfit, a storyteller with a love for chaos. What many fans did not know was that Tom had a second life away from the garage. He was a professional stand-up comedian. Even while filming Fast and Loud in Misfit Garage, he was performing at improv clubs, honing his craft as an entertainer. This dual identity gave him a kind of mental armor. For Tom, playing a role on a reality show, even a fake one, was just another performance. It was a gig. This may be why he was able to endure the drama and emerge on the other side. After Misfit Garage ended, Tom kept moving forward. He continued to work on cars, finding a new home at a shop called Dallas Customs. He dedicated his time to helping rescue and transport dogs in need. He even hinted about getting his own new auto show. Most tellingly, years later, he appeared on a Gas Monkey Garage YouTube episode with Richard Rawlings. The two sat down and reflected on their complicated past, a sign that Tom had been able to move on from the whole ordeal. Jordan Butler's story is very different. He was not a comedian playing a mechanic. He was a mechanic, pure and simple. He was the stylish co-founder who helped lay the groundwork for the entire show. Before TV, he was a semi-professional drag racer in high school, and he claimed he never lost a single race. His identity was rooted in the real authentic world of building and racing cars. For him, the fake rivalry and made-up drama of Misfit Garage was not just a job. It was a corruption of his passion, and it broke him. After he walked away from the show, Jordan disappeared from the public eye. He stopped posting on social media and cut off contact with his former castmates. He later revealed the deep emotional toll the show had taken on him. In a candid Facebook post, he admitted that for a long time he had not had the desire to even touch a car, especially after all the BS with Fired Up. The show that was supposed to be his greatest opportunity had temporarily killed his love for the very thing that defined him. He needed to heal, and he could only do that by getting as far away from the cameras as possible. His passion was only reignited when he started a new project, working on an old truck with his 10-year-old son. Today, Jordan is enjoying a quiet life with his wife and 2 children, happy to be a father and a husband, far away from the world of TV that nearly cost him everything. The story of Tom Smith and Jordan Butler is a journey that began with a firing shrouded in lies and led to a spin-off built on a fake rivalry. It was a world where enemies were business partners and competition was just another word for content. The shows were about flipping cars for a profit, but the real price was paid by the people involved. For Tom the performer, it was a wild ride he was able to walk away from. For Jordan the purist, it was a painful lesson that forced him to leave it all behind to find himself again. The next time you watch a bitter rivalry on a reality show, ask yourself, are you watching a real fight or are you just watching a performance where everyone in the end works for the same boss?